Hi y'all, it's your girl Lauren reporting live from Cooper and Sanford at George Stevens Park here in Arlington, Texas. We are Arlington Urban out here with the community, and we're here to celebrate the culture of our people. Big ups to the whole AUME family, where it's always Arlington first.
We own the hood. If you live by it, die by it, then, man.
Okay. Prince the Pleasure. Hi, Pastor Michael Glaspie. How are you doing today?
So far, I am doing great. It's another. Unfortunately, we don't have the sunshine outside, but I am thankful that this is another day to get out and about.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for meeting with us today as
Sure.
well. We just wanted to ask you a few questions.
Sure.
So I guess let's begin. So one of our first questions for you is, if you were not a pastor, what would be your alternative occupation?
Actually, I spent a career in corporate America. Used to work for IBM in marketing and marketing management in IBM. So I would probably have maybe still be in that. Actually, I'd be retired. Because I was in IBM when I was called into the ministry, when the Lord touched me, and over time it became a tension between whether I should continue in corporate America or whether I should move into working in the church. And finally he made it clear it was time for me to leave corporate America, but I really enjoyed working for IBM, working in corporate America, because it was another opportunity for people to help people and make it the job that I was in. I was responsible for helping people look at the problems they were having and moving information around, and then defining for them how we at IBM could solve those problems. So it was a exhilarating career.
And so that career helped you into moving into ministry, helping people in the community and everything as well.
That's right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So historically, Mount Olive has been a pillar for the Black community in Arlington. What titles have you held at the church that have made a huge impact on the community?
Well, I have done a number of things at the church. When I was initially called into the ministry, I guess I'd been at Mount Olive about a year or so. I'm in the ministry about a year or so, and Pastor Robinson asked me if I would assume the role as Minister of Christian Education on a part-time basis. And that was the first time that we had formally assigned those responsibilities to someone. Along the way, I have been manager of our credit union. At one time, we had a charter school, Metro Charter Academy, and I was the executive director of our charter school. And I've also been assistant. In fact, right now I'm the assistant to Pastor Thompson, helping him. So I've been, from a label standpoint, you could use those, but in reality, I've been involved in the broad scope of ministries at Mount Olive. We started a formal evangelism ministry a number of years back, and I was assistant to the gentleman who was doing it. I used to help Pastor Thompson a great deal in the youth ministry, So I've been heavily involved in the broad base of ministries there at Mount Olive.
Okay, and what year did you start at Mount Olive?
We joined Mount Olive in June of, I almost said 1982.
Okay, wow.
And I was called into ministry in March of 1985. So we've been in ministry, what was that, almost 36 years, and we've been in Mount Olive almost working on 40 years.
Wow,
yeah.
That's a long time. So you said you had experience at Mount Olive's credit union. How has your experience benefited, or how has your experience, can it benefit the city's economy?
One of the things that when you look at being in a position like that, you're constantly evaluating how to help people with financial challenges, and also how they might take full advantage of the monies they do have. So it put me in a position where I focused on ensuring that budgeting was in place so that the business could operate properly. And one of the key things that we have to do is, in fact, the council and the mayor, one of their primary responsibilities is approving a budget, which defines how much we're going to spend in the city, and then indicate how we would like to spend that money and bring that before the people. Of course, the other key responsibility is hiring a city manager, and we're fortunate we have a great city manager now. And then putting the right policies and procedures in place, the ordinances that we use to operate our city, those are the responsibility of the mayor and the council. So my work in involving myself with people, helping them, also has been beneficial in me understanding how to interact with the resources that we have in the city and how best to use those so that we can assure as much as we can that everybody has a chance to live life as they would. You know, we have this tag, as they call it, Arlington, the American Dream City. If somebody's dreams are not being fulfilled, we still have work to do. Our objective should be to allow everyone to come as close as possible to fulfilling their dreams.
Exactly, exactly. And we have to have a strong economy to do so.
That's right.
So where are you from?
Originally, I'm from East Texas. I was born in Marshall and brought up in Tyler. My formative years were in Tyler. My parents were teachers, and in reality, I moved around a great deal in my early years. In fact, our first grade was in Stanford, Texas, which is out in West Texas, not too far from Abilene. And my mother was my first teacher. Yeah, so you can imagine how challenging it was to start off. And then we went to school in what's called Fredonia, which is right outside Kilgore in East Texas for a while. And finally, in junior high school, we moved to Tyler. My mother got a job in Tyler. And so I was able to go to junior high school and high school at Tyler and Emmett Scott Junior High School and Emmett Scott Senior High School, which eventually were closed, the black schools that were eventually closed. So that's sort of my beginning. And from there, I went to the University of Texas and got a degree in math, undergraduate degree in math, and an MBA with concentrations in marketing and finance.
Mm. Oh. So you talked about your high school being black high schools. How would you describe yourself in high school?
I guess you could say I was always adjusting because having not been brought up with everyone, I wasn't necessarily a stranger, but I wasn't real tight with a lot of people. So it took me a while to get comfortable with the people I was around, but I was considered somewhat of a leader in high school because I was president of my junior class, vice president of my senior class. A number of the organizations in high school I was heavily involved in. So typically, I guess you could say I'm viewed as a young leader. In fact, even in my church, for example, whenever they wanted a youth to speak or what, I was often asked to do it. So And which is interesting because by nature I'm somewhat of an introvert, but at the same time you recognize that you have to share in a lot of cases, and you have to take responsibility all the time.
Yes. Do you think that you moving around a lot as well helped you kind of get out of your shell a little bit and maybe talk more and be a leader as well?
It probably did. The different environments I had to operate in, as I said, we moved around some in my formative years. We finally settled in Tyler, and I was able to go to junior high school and get a little more familiar with the people around me in high school, even more so. But then going to the University of Texas, when I got there, I'd go into the classroom and look around. I didn't see anybody look like me. So that was really a challenge because you had to fight through the discomfort of feeling as though you were different and alone, but at the same time, you had to assure that you were recognized so that you could get the things necessary to perform the way you had to in order to make it through.
Exactly. So are you a family-oriented person?
Yes, ma'am. My wife and I have been married 46 years.
Oh, wow, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that is, you go through life and, of course, you make decisions all the time. But the second most important decision I made is my wife. The first, of course, accepting Christ. Mm-hmm. And then she has been just an incredible asset along the way. And we partner pretty much in everything as we move down through this life. And then we've been blessed to have 3 children who are out on their own. I'm thankful that they are productive citizens. And we have 3 grandsons at this time. And I love my family. Anything I can do to help, them I will do. And I try to involve my family in as much as I can. And of course, in particular, as I was saying, my wife, there's almost nothing I do that she's not either part of or for sure she's aware of. And I usually get her input and perspective on what I should be doing. Mm-hmm.
What did she think about you running for mayor?
She was very supportive of the idea. She realized I've been on the school board, been on the city council, and she knows that I love this community. I love the city, and I've been just called to serve, I believe, and it's just a tremendous opportunity. Assuming everything works out, to serve our community and just make this a better place for everyone and bring us together. We have in Arlington, I think we've done a good job of establishing a foundation of being together. But right now, what we typically see is we do an excellent job in our little segments, our little ethnic and racial segments, and we respect one another. But ideally, what we'd like to see is us embrace one another, engage one another. And that's one of the things I'd like to focus on, making sure that because in reality, as good as we can be in these little segments and kind of explode if we just come together in terms of what we can deliver.
What do you think are some solutions that can help us embrace each other?
Well, I think one of the things, and this, you're probably aware of this Unity Council that was established, who went through about a 9-month study, taking a close look at some of the issues that were causing inequities in our city. There were 5 areas that they specifically looked at, and they came up with 59 recommendations, specific concerns, and then recommendations from those concerns. And one of the things that I think will be critical as we move down the road is to see the city implement those so that we're in a position where we can come together. We can open up opportunities to interact with each other. We can really be a part of one another. And I think that's of course critical. And just on the side, one of the things that for a number of years has been on my mind, I've talked to several people around the city about it, is having some sort of multicultural event, where we actually came together and shared with one another what's important to us, and in turn each have an opportunity to look into each other to find out what they're about, so that we get more comfortable with each other, embrace each other, and make our community a so much better place to live.
Exactly. I like that. That's a good idea, too, to bring everyone together. So just going back a little bit to your background as well, you served in the Army, correct?
Right.
What was your experience like inside of the Army? And we know that you're a Vietnam veteran as well, so thank you so much for your service.
Sure. Yeah. It was very interesting. I was in college, and I got this, you may have that was a song a while back, you know, probably before your time. It said, "Greetings, this is Uncle Sam." Well, I got one of those letters. And at the time I was in college and trying to move through, but I must admit I wasn't investing myself as fully as I should in my studies at that particular point in time. And so I ended up getting drafted into the service. And it was probably the worst night that I've ever spent in my life. Was a night that I realized that I was being drafted into the Army, being pulled away from everything that I was familiar with. And they had put us in this little room where it looked like the walls were closing in on you. I have a little bit of claustrophobia anyway. And it was one of the worst nights of my life that I spent to realize that I would not be able to do the things that I was familiar and comfortable with, but being taken into a whole new environment in which I had to adhere to directions from people that I didn't know what they expected. But we, as human beings, are adaptable. And so I was able to adapt to the training and preparation that we went through. In fact, when you start off, the way the Army is structured, we have what's called companies, which is sort of basic unit. There are squads, typically 4 squads within the company. And then there are multiple companies, usually about 4 companies form a battalion, and then multiple battalions form a division. And so the group that I was a part of, because I guess somebody had been watching me, I ended up winning what's called the Spirit of Honor Award for that battalion, which meant that my squad, my company, and my battalion, everyone was looked at. And I ended up winning the Spirit of Honor Award, which is supposed to be reflective of someone who displays the kind of character and attitude that they would like in a soldier. So I went from being intimidated to being considered a model soldier.
Wow. And so what do you think your experience in the Army, how can that help you serve if elected as mayor, or just in your everyday life as well?
Well, first of all, service.
Yes.
Because I served I understand what it means to serve. Secondly, I understand what it means to be a part of a team. We had to work because I wasn't just I was in the fields fighting. And so we were very dependent on one another for survival and for accomplishing our mission. So teamwork was critical. Caring for one another, was imperative. And it presented an opportunity to get to know other people. I had grown up, as I said, in a predominant, well, not in a predominant, all relatively speaking, all black environment. Been exposed at University of Texas to an environment that was new to me, and gradually began to operate in that environment. But still, when you stop to peel back all that was going on, I was still pretty much isolated. Even though I'd go to class, look around, I'd be the only person there. When I'd leave and go to my dorm, I'd have other black men that I would hang around. When we go out, we'd have other black people that we hung around. But in the Army, you couldn't segregate yourself. We're all out in the field. We all have the same goals and objectives. We're all challenged by the same thing. We're dependent on one another. So I got a chance to interact with other cultures and other perspectives on life. So it kind of opened me up. Made me realize the world is much bigger than what I'd been used to operating in. And it's really incumbent upon me to tie into the largeness of the world, because it expands you as a person. It gives you an opportunity to see that there are many things we probably should consider before we make the decisions that we make, versus going in with our personal biases and concluding that something is the case. So it opened up. So I learned, first of all, just, I guess a basic thing, I learned I had a lot more courage.
Yeah.
By the way, not only was I in the fields fighting, but I carried an M60 machine gun, which is referred to as a pig. And basically, it was my responsibility. Anytime we got into a firefight, an exchange with the enemy, it was my responsibility for us to help us get fire superiority, which meant that we were in a position where we were dominating the exchange versus taking it all. And so I was kind of a target, you know, that because they knew if they took out the person who carried the M60 machine gun, it put them at an advantage. So I realized what courage really was, you know, because be honest, it's not the best feeling in the world when you realize that your life is at stake every moment. But you also realize there's certain things you have to do to give yourself and your comrades an opportunity to survive through it. So learned that. As I said, I learned about teamwork. I learned that the world is much bigger than I had thought. And one of the biggest things I learned is the Lord was with me wherever I went.
Yes, exactly. To even go, though, I mean.
Yes, that's right. You know, when I got over there and discovered that I could still pray,
Yeah.
and He was still listening. So yeah, it was a great experience.
So what got you into politics?
Well, what happened was my daughter and one of her teachers, that was something that a teacher did that we didn't particularly care for. And so we went to the school to see if we could get it taken care of, get it addressed. And the whole thing ended up escalating to the principal. So the principal and I ended up kind of working through and figuring out how to handle it. Turned out I didn't realize he was impressed with how I carried myself, because my whole purpose was to do what's best for my daughter. And Arlington ISD was in the process of formulating a committee, this is in 1990, to take a look at the facilities in the school district and define where improvements need to be made over the next 10 years so that we could deliver the best education to our students. That meant buildings, that meant resources that they may put in, like for example, it could be athletic facilities. Could be putting in more making available instruments and fine arts. You know, just a variety of things we looked at. And so the principal that I'd interacted with asked me if I would put in an application to be a part of that committee. And you know, okay.
Yeah.
And never thinking I'd be chosen. And so I was chosen to be a part of that committee, and I ended up, because I worked for IBM, I ended up chairing our technology committee, our IT committee. And during the course of that year, I got to interact with a number of people in the school district. Towards the end of it, they asked me, would I run for school board? And so I reflected on it, and I finally did. And lo and behold, I got elected. So that was sort of the start of, even though I've always felt an obligation to do whatever I could to help in our community and make a difference. I was reflecting back on when we were in Waco before we moved here. I used to do a lot of work with Baylor University and what they were doing there. And so after a number of years on the school board, I had some people ask me, have you thought about running for city council? And I said, well, no, I hadn't really given it a whole lot of thought. I said, well, you ought to give it some thought. In fact, you ought to do it. And so I finally decided to run for city council. Got into a runoff, and a gentleman beat me at first go-round. And then just a few years later, a guy who had been very supportive of me, who had been on the city council, who was on the city council, Gene Patrick, discovered he was pretty sick. And so he stepped away from his council position, which opened up, and he encouraged me, along with a number of other people, to run for city council again. And so I ran again and I won. I think there were 5 candidates, and I was able to, the first week, we expected a runoff, but I was able to get 53% of the vote, and was elected to council. Had the privilege of serving 7 years on the council, part of which was Mayor Pro Tem to Mayor Jeff Williams, and it's just a great honor, a privilege to be able to serve our community, be in a position where you can help do some of the things that people would like to see happen.
Exactly. Sorry.
No problem.
How do you think that Arlington City Council legitimized your place in this election as well, or like what experience did being on City Council give you?
Well, we've done we did a number of things. First, economically, during the time I was on the council, we probably okayed about $4 billion worth of economic development, in our city. So we just had a boom during that period. I headed a committee that got us to implement cameras for our police. We got that in place. Helped us implement an MWBE policy so that gives everyone a chance,
And can you explain what?
That's minority, women, business enterprise, MWBE. Basically what it means is underutilized business, typically African American, Hispanic, women, Asian. We traditionally have not had an opportunity to take full advantage of projects that the city, for example, the stadiums that we built. And so one of the things we did was we worked with a Cordish company out of Baltimore to put together this Texas Live facility. And during the course of that, we developed sort of a profile of what we would like in the way of underutilized businesses participating. And we had a 25% target. And we did fairly well, but it was one of those things where we intentionally focused on the fact that we want to be inclusive in this economic development that we had. So eventually out of that, I said, work with a group called Community Influencer Leaders Roundtable that's a part of the chamber here in Arlington, and put together a framework for an MWBE policy, which we presented to mayor and the council, or presented to staff, who then came back and presented a recommendation to us as to what kind of policy we should have in place that we did. Then we joined this certification group that we have, which basically certifies that underutilized businesses are legitimate, and gives sort of a list for when we're trying to identify who is able to perform these tasks, sort of legitimizes who they can take a close look at. So, and we had to wrestle with this whole thing of short-term rental, which is people were renting their homes in neighborhoods on the weekends, and you might have kids, you didn't know who was coming in. And it was quite, it was quite disruptive to our neighborhood. So we had to put together a response to how we could, on the one hand, assure that we maintain the sanctity of our neighborhoods, our residences, because people buy homes with the expectations that they're going to live around people who will be there, and they know kind of what to expect from them, versus every weekend you got a whole different dynamic that you're trying to deal with. So we help put that in place. We wrestle with this whole thing of drilling. Urban drilling is a real challenge. So we've over time had to refine the ordinances we had in place to assure that we were being as safe as we could, because the number one priority is the safety of our citizens. Then the latitude for those who desire to drill to extract those natural resources, because natural gas is something that we all are able to benefit from. So it was one of those that was a benefit, but at the same time we need to assure that it was safe. So those are some of the key things. Key things we had to take something with you. I guess I'd been on the council 3 or 4 months, and someone asked me, in effect, what it was like to be on the council, my expectations versus the things that I encountered. And I had to respond that when I was elected and started serving, the last thing I expected that I would be dealing with was cats and dogs. And that's one of the first set of ordinances we had to do, how to deal with feral cats and feral dogs. So it just reminds you of how complex and broad city operations are, and it's imperative that you have a sensitivity to all of it.
What was one of the most, probably one of the most important issues that you dealt with on City Council?
Well, probably I would say the 2, well, maybe 3. Just of course, economic development. We wanted to make sure that we continue to provide opportunities that would benefit our city. Because one of the things that a lot of people lose sight of is, as we have huge opportunities that are developed in our city, it expands our tax base, which puts us in a position where we can minimize the tax impact on the everyday citizen who owns a home. So doing that and trying to, as much as we could, provide the right resources in that area. But the whole MWB assuring that underutilized businesses are having an opportunity to capitalize on the many projects that are coming down the pipe from the city. And then that short-term rental, that was really a tough one to deal with, because you had residents who were very, very adamant that they didn't want these in that areas. And then you had, on the other side, people who were owners of these short-term rental properties say, hey, it's my property, I can do what I want to with it. So it was a challenge kind of balancing that. And we think we came up with a reasonable solution to it. And it's probably one of those things we're going to have to continue to look at.
Exactly. So let's see.
I guess want to throw this in too, is transportation is something that we've had to wrestle with over a number of years. We voted down busing three times, but put together this Transportation Advisory Council to take a close look at what options we might have, and they put together a set of recommendations that we are following through on. And one of which is, are you familiar with VIA?
Yes.
Yeah, it's sort of the first step that they recommended, and now we're in the process of identifying new technologies that may make sense as we incorporate what's necessary to move our people around, because we can't solve all of our transportation problems with concrete. The roads are going to wear out, and there's only so many roads you can put in place. So the question becomes, how do we efficiently move people around, minimize the congestion, the air pollution, and put ourselves in a position where it's cost effective to move people around.
Exactly. So a kind of tougher question. If Arlington didn't have term limits, would you have ran for city council again?
Probably. Yeah, I probably would have. I was thinking seriously about running for it again. Well, really not probably, because if I would run for council, I probably wouldn't be running for mayor. You know? Yeah, but yeah, I most likely I would have run again.
Okay. Outside of politics, what are some hobbies that you enjoy doing?
Traveling. Love traveling. I mean,
Has the pandemic kind of messed that up?
Killing me.
Yeah.
This pandemic is really, and we enjoy going to out of the country periodically. Love going to places, beaches and all, but lately we had, at least I had, my wife went along with me. I love to drive, and so we've just done so many land trips. We've gotten into this relationship with about 9 other couples. In October of every year, we go to North Carolina, out on the beach, this big house of 12 rooms, and it's just an incredible experience. And what we normally do is we'll leave a little early and do just some kind of tourist things. I had a chance to go by Mount Vernon, George Washington's home. I had a chance to see Andrew Johnson's home, you know, just as we passed by, check those out. And then other things as we're going on, as one of the beauties of driving on the road, you look up and see something, wow, that's interesting, let's pull over, yeah. You know? And also we were going to this annual jazz festival, the Capitol Jazz Festival in June of every year, and that would give us an opportunity to do the similar kind of thing. And the real, aside from just a trip, it gives us a chance to fellowship with long-term friends that we get very few chances to see. So it's just really enjoyable. So traveling would be my number one.
When COVID is not as, I guess, how do I say this, big, where would be the first place that you would go or travel to?
Probably either the place I was telling you about that we do in October, or the Jazz Festival in Maryland in June would be first couple of places we'd go. Or we might take off and go to Atlanta and visit my sister-in-law. We love Atlanta.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Nice. All right. So do you enjoy any sports?
Oh, yeah. I played a little bit in high school. Love football, love basketball, enjoy baseball. In fact, right people playing tennis, Tiger Woods. I'm sitting there watching golf, you know. So yeah, I really enjoy sports. It's just so relaxing. The other side of it with football and basketball and baseball, since I played those in high school, it's one of those things. It's relatable. You can understand the challenges that the athletes are going through, and you're amazed at the things that they're able to do. I was just happened last night to be looking at a little deal with Julius Dr. J. Irving and Dominique, the human highlight film, Wilkins. And they were showing some of the incredible things they did. And it's real easy to forget that everybody is not gifted that way.
For sure.
Yeah.
So the Martin High School football field will be named in your honor. What does this mean for you?
It means it's a great honor. But what I look at it as really sort of a family honor, because my parents spent over 90 years between them teaching the children of Texas. So to see Glaspie on it, it basically says it honors my parents. I have my aunts, uncles, most of them taught. So it basically, to me, is indicative of the investment that my family has put into assuring that that everybody gets an education.
Exactly. I like that. That's amazing. So, What are the biggest issues in Arlington that you want to address?
Well, right now, the biggest thing is dealing with this COVID. We have to get this thing out of the way. We have to eliminate or at least minimize its presence so that we can start getting back into economic sustainability. Well, people need to be able to work. People need to be able to socialize. People need to be able to go to church. So we need to get that out of the way so we can get those things back in place. You know, of course, it's always important for to continue to build economically so that we have good jobs. One of the things that is always in the back of my mind, people such as you, we want to make sure you stay in Arlington. we don't, because what typically happens, you grow up and you look around, and if it's not an enticing environment for our young people, they'll look elsewhere. So we need to make sure that we continue to provide in our city those things that attract our young people, because you are our future. You know, one day I'm gonna sit completely down. You know, so, and which adds another thing is we need to assure that as a city we're doing all we can to engage actually the totality of our community, our universities, our school district, our nonprofits, our churches, and all, so that we can do all we possibly can to assure that our children are getting the best possible education, and at the same time are being prepared to deal with the dynamics of life, so they have solid values. I think sometimes we lose sight of the fact we get so caught up in trying to sharpen our young people's minds that we lose sight of the fact that it's important to have values consistent with that so that you really can make a difference. So we need to assure that our kids have the best tools, the best approaches to dealing with that which is to come. And it's kind of like target shooting. You don't shoot at where the thing is moving. You shoot where it is going to be. So we have to prepare them to be able to meet the dynamics of tomorrow instead of focusing just on being able to deal with things today.
Exactly, and that's good advice too. So. Speaking of COVID, though, how do you feel about the city's response to COVID?
Actually, I think the city's done a good job. Particularly the fire department has taken a lot of responsibility for overseeing how we approached it. I think our mayor has done a good job in leading us to stay focused on taking advantage of things we know work, like masks, like social distancing, like not getting in crowds. He has engaged the religious community, and he's reached out to the totality of the community so that we can see it's important for all of us to participate in trying to get this thing under control. It doesn't do any good for me to try to do the right thing, you to try to do the right thing, then the next person over there doesn't, because it affects everyone. And then with this distribution of the vaccination, I think the fire department has done a great job of assuring that those supplies that come in are being put in people's arms. But we need to make sure that everybody, particularly the most vulnerable, have opportunities to get shots as well. And a lot of times it's real easy for people who move around or set up as an area where people that are fairly well off are able to access it, but we need to make sure we get into the communities that normally we don't spend a whole lot of time in to make it available to everyone.
Exactly. So also, what are some of your thoughts on the recent winter storm?
That was a harrowing experience. First of all, it needs to be carefully analyzed what could have been done to and then assure those things are set in place. The one thing we, under those unfortunate circumstances, again, we got a chance to see the caring spirit of Arlington, because people reached out to provide water, food, clothing, shelter for people who were where their electricity went out or water supply was gone. So it was one of those where we were challenged, but then we responded as a community. And what we need to do is go back and analyze all that happened and define what we could have done to prevent it. And if we can't prevent it, at least minimize it, because we just don't need to be in that position again.
Yes, but I do think it did show the community in Arlington how we came together and everything, helping each other. So.
That's right.
And then just regarding the COVID-19 pandemic and the recent winter storm, how do you feel about Jeff Williams' performance as mayor?
Jeff has done a great job as mayor. There are, again, people have limited idea of how complex our city is. And he has done a good job of steering us through some challenges, and then to be hit by this big one with this pandemic, and then turn around all of a sudden this weather thing. And the big thing is he reaches out to people, he engages people, he listens to people, and then he tries to incorporate the things that he hears that can make a difference. And so I think he's done a great job.
So how do you think about the new police chief, Al Jones, and how he's done so far being in office?
From what I can tell, he's doing a good job. I've heard he's doing a lot of reaching out in the community to connect with people, and I think that's important. One of the things that, particularly our communities, there's been a distrust of the police over the years, and all the events that have happened this summer. In fact, you go back and it's been happening, have just solidified this distrust that we have for the police. So it's important for us to build relationships, police to build relationships such that the community and the police form a partnership where they are viewed as a community asset to assist in assuring our safety. And we are all working together to work through this thing. And I believe, from what I've heard, that's in essence what he's doing. He's continuing to reach deeper and deeper. Will Johnson, the chief before, he did a great job of engaging the community. Dr. Bowman, who was the chief before him, really started a lot of our community initiatives that we had, and it's just, we need to realize that we're all together and not just separate entities. It's real easy to look at the police as them, and the police to look at the community as the other, but we need to look at us being together.
So what are some solutions that you think the police can do to get out in the community more or better that relationship with people?
Well, there are probably a number of things can be done. One, Fort Worth is doing interesting something where they have started this crisis intervention program where they have worked with sociologists to help police understand the different kinds of people and situations they're going to encounter and how to address them versus assuming everything is, this huge crime that you need to go in and blow up everything and doing. And I think we need to make our police more and more sensitive to the community that they are involved in. One of the things that in the Unity Council, one of the segments we looked at was policing. And that group, one of their recommendations was that maybe police should actually spend time living in the community for for a brief period of time to get to know people better and give them an opportunity to know you better and realize that they are an asset to help make the community a safer place to live, and people can get comfortable with them and interact with them. So I think we need to do things along those lines to assure that there is this connection between the police and the community so that we really have a safe environment in which we can live.
Nice. And so going into some other policing questions as well. Let's see. So you were a part of the Unity Council, and in the Unity Council study, it showed that Black people were pulled over in Arlington and ticketed about 37.5% of the time. Black people only make up about 13% of the population in Arlington. This is an ongoing issue that many people, including myself, continue to deal with. If elected, how can you as mayor solve this problem and this disparity that we see?
Well, I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier. We need to make sure that police understand the community that they're dealing with and provide them with resources, policies, and how they should interact with people. And the thing that we have to hopefully get to the point is they look at people first, what can I do to help, versus what can I do to squelch something. And so continued sensitivity training, continued interaction with in fact, we at one time we had this we call community conversations, where you go around to different community segments to understand what they view as issues, what they view as concerns, and then collectively come up with how we begin to solve those so that there is a smooth interaction and relationship with the police. So I think we just have to keep focusing on drawing the police and our community closer and closer together, because to me, the closer the two of them become, the less room there is for crime, and we're in a position where everyone can feel safe and secure in our community.
And then if elected as mayor, how could you and City Council work together to help the policing community and then just citizens and residents come together?
I think one of the things we set up, look very closely at like best practices around the country in which communities have developed great police community relationships, and define what applicability those have to Arlington, bring those in when it makes sense, and implement them, for lack of a better word, put it in the Arlington way, so that we can begin to pull together what's necessary so we can be a wholesome community instead of a segmented community.
So speaking of crime again, overall the crime across Arlington has decreased, but violent crimes are rising. How can you coordinate with Chief Al Jones on fixing the violent crime issue?
Well, I think one of it goes again, we take a close look at the data to understand exactly what it is that's occurring and define what approaches the police may be able to incorporate. And in some cases, in fact, probably most cases, it would involve some with engaging the community to assure that we're both on the common sheet, that we're operating in sync instead of being disengaged. Then again, once we've defined what we view as the issues, it gives us a chance to look at other data sets from around the country and see exactly how similar things may have been resolved. One of toward the end of my career at IBM, this whole a continuous improvement movement came into existence, which reminds us that nothing is perfect. And we need to continually look at what we can do to make things better. We may want to stop and just assess, bring in some experts, assess the things that we're doing in our police department, which you can identify those things that we are great at, and then identify things that we may need to improve on. Get community input so the community can define the things that they feel are critical, the things that they feel need to be dealt with, and then be able to invest in and involve ourselves in those.
And being on the Unity Council, what stood out to you the most in Arlington?
Well, I think what we did, it gave us a chance to, for lack of a better way of putting it, sort of set things on the table that there were definite inequities in how people were treated and access to resources. And as we began to identify those, we could associate specific concerns or issues related to them, and then take input and do research from other areas and conclude, here are some recommendations that can address those. So I think what it did, it sort of lifted something we had kind of, because, you know, on the surface, Arlington is a fairly, how should you put it? When you take under consideration our diversity, we on the surface, we do a pretty good job of interacting with each other. But then there are real issues, inhibitors to us actually operating on a level playing field, and a lot of those things were identified. And by the way, the work that the Unity Council did was a great foundation, but we still have a whole lot to do. I mean, it's like, you know, proverbial, how do you eat an elephant? You cut it off a little bit at a time. Well, that's in effect what we did, because the thing was so vast. And what we did, we defined these 5 areas: economics, education, housing, health and wellness, and policing. And that probably at least that many more we could have. But we focused on those so we could address something and come up with a tangible set of recommendations that we can now, and I think it's imperative on the person who sits in that seat as mayor, that one of the priorities is assure that those recommendations are fulfilled.
Exactly, for sure. So there's been a little talk about your run for mayor as well. Arlington residents have expressed concern that you ran for mayor in order to split the vote amongst certain candidates. How do you feel about this accusation?
People think I ran to split the vote among certain candidates.
Yes.
I don't like it. It's because, you know, I ran because I wanted to be mayor of Arlington. You know, that's the only reason. It's the only reason I've run for city council, and because I love Arlington. I want to serve the people, and you know, that's. And the other side of it, why was I pointed at there? Because you know, there are 5 African Americans, and all of a sudden I'm the one that split the vote. You know, and the other thing that a lot of people don't realize, this is the only option I had if I wanted to serve our city, is to run for mayor, because I can't run for council again. You know, so. So
you're not able to run for council even in like a different, like I know 8 is, but.
No. It's what that term limit petition did. It limited the number of terms you can serve to 3 2-year terms, a total of 6 years in a council position. Then, if possible, you could run for mayor. Vice versa, a person could run for mayor, and if they wanted to, they could run for council positions, you know, after a 6-year term. But that's it. The way it's written, you can never run again the way it's written now.
Yes. How do you feel about term limits as well?
Yeah, to be honest, to me, if term limit every time you elect, I don't necessarily think that we have to particularly on the local level, because we interact with our leaders so much that I don't really think we have to. But I'm a person that, you know, if that's what the people want, it's fine. You know, yeah, but every 2 years, there's an opportunity to limit your term, because they can vote you out, you know, if they don't like what you're doing.
True. So win or lose this election, do you see yourself involved in politics in the future, or what are some of your plans for the future? I will
always do what I can to help the city, but probably from a political standpoint, I probably would not involve myself in any other politics.
Yeah. Any like state or federal or anything else?
No.
Okay.
No. This is, in theory, nonpartisan. Anything above this is partisan. And I don't like partisan politics. I mean, all that finger pointing and, you know, it's, and the bad part about it is it's starting to kind of creep into our local nonpartisan positions, but I just do not like all that finger pointing and calling people names and all that. That's stupid to me. I mean, share your perspective, what you'd like to do, the policies that you may want to put in place, but you shouldn't be getting personal.
Exactly. So on March the 2nd, Governor Greg Abbott announced that he was rescinding the mask mandate and capacity restrictions in the state of Texas. What are your thoughts on the governor's announcement?
I wish he'd have waited. You know, I think we should be in a position where we can really see ourselves clear of this whole thing. And I guess if he was going to do something, he should have, you know, maybe staggered it to give us a chance to see how under control we're getting this, or maybe even push down the latitude for local groups to make local governance groups to make decisions on what's best for them. But it's just, I thought it was a little bit early.
And how do you feel about the city's response to the lift of these restrictions?
I think Mel Williams is trying to keep us on track. We're staying safe, but at the same time positioning ourselves so that when we come out of this thing, we can go full bore. My understanding, he's encouraging everyone to continue to use the directives that have been given by CDC so that we can minimize opportunity for this thing to be spread. In fact, that's what he indicated. And so I think collectively we have to work together as a city to put ourselves in a position where we can arrest this thing as much as possible.
Exactly. So most of East Arlington is made up of Black and Hispanic people. How can leadership prevent gentrification while still making sure that the area receives much needed renovations?
Well, I think we have to, one of the things, of course, we have to assure that the work that's being done is reflective of real needs versus, as you were indicating, what we're trying to gentrify the whole place. And also the community itself should be involved in any sort of, lack of a better way of putting it, look like mass changes or modifications that are being done so that it minimizes an opportunity for something like that to happen. One of the real keys to me, one of the things I'd really like to do is get as much of the different segments of our community as possible involved in providing input to the city about what their needs are, to assure that we are addressing what allows them to partake of their dream.
Exactly. So next we want to just talk about the local artists inside of Arlington. So Arlington Urban also hosts a music platform as well. So the city of Arlington is known for supporting some local artists. For example, singer Maren Morris received in a proclamation from Mayor Jeff Williams. How could popular artists from Arlington's hip hop culture, such as Splurge, Cincy Molly, Two Tone, The Vibrant, Nojo Wallace, Grindhard Snap, Victor Pope Jr., Digiscale P, Hanani, Free Game Griff, Gucci Boy Melv, BL Double, Newbie Mac, Measy Main, and Gregory Stacks receive some of the same support from the city that other singers from different categories of music have received?
Well, I think it's important that you go and that these are presented. And one of the big challenges that we often encounter, my wife has this lady that she's been friends with over the years, and with that whole thing that started with George Floyd this summer, and peeling back on the fact that there was still a lot of racial bias and inequities and all. And she's a white lady, of course. She visited with my wife about it, and her response was, "I didn't know." And that's critical. We need to make sure that the things that you're doing, or things that those groups are doing, are known, and the benefit that they're providing. We lose sight of the fact that everybody has a following, if you will, and we need to be sensitive to their following, sensitive to the difference that they're making, sensitive to the cultural exposure that they can provide,
exactly,
and recognizing that Arlington is much bigger than any particular segment. And kind of going back to what we were talking earlier about the Unity Council and how the things that we do to bring us together, we need to see ourselves as diverse in art, in age, in racial makeup, in economic makeup. We're just a diverse city, and we need to make sure that everyone is a participant in partaking of what we can offer.
You said you listen to jazz. Do you listen to any hip hop? Have a favorite hip hop artist? Anything?
No, I must confess, to be honest, I very seldom listen to R&B even anymore. You know, I still like, as I say, James Brown, Aretha Franklin, and we'll listen to some old school. But when it comes to just listening to music, primarily jazz, I'll listen to. And that's just my choice, which I think we should be respectful of everyone's choice and realize that the platform is big enough for all of us to stand on.
Yes, I love that. So moving into diversity and everything as well, we wanted to talk a little bit about apartment rates and housing. So Arlington's apartment rental rates and cost of living have increased over the past decade, even though wages have not increased. If elected, would you make housing more affordable as a priority?
Yeah, I mean that's a big concern. This must have been, a couple of years or so ago. I was reading an article where a lady, I think her husband passed, and she decided that, this was here in the Metroplex, I'm not sure whether, I think it was Fort Worth, but it's indicative of kind of what we're dealing with across the board. And she felt that she had relatively too much home just for her, so she decided she'd sell her house. And, snapped up quickly. But it took her a year and a half to find something that she could afford, because we need to work on how we can create the latitude for people to be able to live in, I heard a new term instead of affordable, attainable housing, attainable housing. And it's really, for example, I look at our home, and fortunately we paid for our home. Had we not, it would probably start killing us. Your taxes go up, your mortgage you're wrestling with. maintenance. And the older your home gets, the more you got to maintain it. So we need to see if there's a way we can get our hands around controlling these dynamics that impact the cost of housing, so that people can live comfortably.
Exactly.
And beyond, I don't have a magic bullet, but we need to stay focused on it to see what, if anything, we as a city can do to ease that pressure and that strain that's on people.
Exactly. So what are your stances on alternative paths for students who don't want to or don't wish to pursue a college degree?
I think it was probably about 5 or 6 years ago, doing a study, and they were saying, I think like 60 or 70% of the jobs that were going to be available didn't necessarily require a college degree. You know, great jobs like electrician, plumbers, and what have you. So I think one of the things we need to do is continue to capitalize on these programs we have to prepare students to be able to go out with basic skill foundations so that they can identify a particular something that's of interest to them and can provide them with a livelihood. And then the more, for example, we just opened, Arlington School District about 3 or 4 years ago, opened at Dan Diaper Tech Center. And what it does, it provides an opportunity for kids to realize that there are a number of options for them, not only if they want to go to college, but if they don't want to go to college, here's areas they can train themselves in so they can make a good living and enjoy life. And we truly have to vote, what we used to refer to as vocational technical, as we need to make sure that those programs are available so a kid as they're going up, a student as they are going through school, they can begin to identify what appeals to them. And if it turns out that they don't want to go to a college track, they can be attracted to something that has long-term personal benefit, economic benefit for them, so that when they leave, they're either right there or just need a little additional training so they have skills necessary to be successful.
Exactly, and help stay out of trouble
That's
as
right.
well. So,
I think one of the, I look back at myself when I was growing up. I was blessed to I think I shared with my undergraduate degree was in math at UT. And so numbers, I just deal with numbers. It took a while for me to finally figure out that I could actually piece English words together. Because one of the things I learned early on, I don't care what you do, it's typically not of significance until you can document it. And so while I was going through, very fortunate I could deal with math, went to typing class. I say, hey, that's for girls. And I regret now that I didn't focus on, because you couldn't, while I was coming through, you couldn't relate the training you were getting to what you were eventually going to do. Whereas I think now we begin to focus more and more on how this training, this foundational stuff you're going through, you can feed into some application area, so you can begin to say, aha, I'm not just learning my ABCs, but there's a practical, beneficial, long-term thing to this.
exactly. All right, so we do have 3 community questions. So first is from Arlington Urban Viewer, Free Game Griff, and Arlington Rapper. He asked, what would make your time in office unique?
What would make my time in office unique?
If elected.
If elected. I guess my broad base of experience, I'm very tied into the education community with the time I spent on the school board. I've been on county boards and commissions, and of course I've been a part of the city. I've been on hospital boards, so I have a sensitivity to the health issues that we're dealing with, that we would be dealing with. So I guess the broad experience base that I have allows me to be open-minded and insightful about the issues that we're going to, because as I said, this is a complex. A lot of people think that you can just walk in, but it takes a while to figure out where your seat is.
Yeah, for sure.
Up there. So I think that just having that great experience base would be very beneficial. And then the other thing is I'm approachable. I engage people. I think people feel comfortable coming up, talking with me. And I think it's important for our total community to have a relationship with the Vietnamese community, have a relationship with the Hispanic community. Of course, I have a relationship with us, have a great relationship with white communities. I think just across the board, I'm sort of linked in, excuse the expression, linked in to the community in total, so that any approaches that we might take would be reflective of how it could help everyone.
Nice. So our next community input question is from Arlington Urban viewer D. Powell. She asked, how do you plan to incorporate the city's plans of creating local markets or small grocers, access to safe and inclusive public spaces, and community hubs for people of color to feel welcomed in the downtown area?
Well, I think one of the things that's critical is we have to make sure that people of color are involved in what we're doing, so that there's a natural buy-in to the whole process. One of the difficulties you always have is to put a program or have something in place and expect people to respond to it who've never had a chance to understand, engage, be involved in the whole process. So it's critical that we assure that people of color are heavily involved in these plans that are being put together, so that as these grocers are set up, they feel comfortable in partaking of them. And also we need to take under consideration if there are, lack of a better way of putting it, like ethnic specific products. We need to make sure those are there, so that the people will be drawn into them and feel that it's really a part of them and part of their culture.
Exactly. Excuse me. And then our last community input question is going to be from Liveable Arlington. It says, in the years since gas drilling started, a lot of peer-reviewed research has been done pointing to serious health issues from living next to drilling. Many Arlington residents have serious concerns about living next to fracking pollution. What steps will you take to address this public health issue?
I think one of the things that we need to do is to assure that we have, how should you call it, ways to measure any sort of pollution and all that's in the air, and assure that as we allow additional drilling or what have you, that it does not impact the neighborhoods. Just one of my concerns personally, while I was on the council, I was concerned that we were not approaching, for lack of a better way of putting it, like drill out. We talk about bill out when we basically used up all of our land for building. Well, I think we will approach using all the land that we should be using for drilling, and we need to make sure that if any other permits are given, that those permits are well within our safety guidelines, so that the point that was mentioned, nobody should be concerned about this having any kind of polluted effect on them that would cause health problems. Our number one priority as a city is the safety and security of our citizens. So that should be something that we go through and clearly identify that any potential health issues are under control.
Awesome. Well, that finishes our community input questions.
All right.
So I have one last question for you as well.
Sure.
If elected, where do you want to see Arlington by the time that you leave office?
Where do I want? I would like to see us closer together as a community. I would like to see us economically taking full advantage of the unique offerings that each individual group can have collectively. To me, there's the only facility in Arlington, ISD, named after an African American. It's Tommy Williams Elementary School. She had a great perspective on things. We typically look at and throw this phrase around melting pot, where it's supposed all the different races and ethnic groups interact with each other and all. But the thing about the that idea of a melting pot, it almost sounds as though you begin to blend in with each other. Whereas she had this idea of a salad bowl.
Mm-hmm. So it's distinct.
Yeah, where each has its own distinction. Mm-hmm. But the beauty of it is you enjoy it because of the collective taste, mm-hmm. and not the individual taste. Mm-hmm. And so we need to pool ourselves together so we can have this great flavor for who we are as a community. And I'd like to see at the end of my run that I move that ball and getting closer and closer to us being truly a collective, inclusive community.
Well, thank you. Is there anything else that you want to say to viewers about yourself, about your campaign, or anything you have going on?
Well, I guess the thing is, one of the big motivators is the experience I have working with the city, understanding its operations, so that day one I would be able to continue us along. Also, I have the tremendous relationships across the city, school district, business segment, the religious groups, the nonprofits. So hopefully be able to draw us even closer together and working to ensure, for example, our children having the best possible education. Issues that come up, we can collectively look at them as a community and come up with definitive approaches to addressing them. And then I just want to ensure that we continue to provide great jobs for everyone. As I was saying, don't want people like you thinking about leaving, but saying, hey, this is a great place to live because I have a great, and then our neighborhoods want to make sure that we continue to beautify our neighborhoods and make them better, our streetscape, and also deal with things that you mentioned earlier about the pandemic has hit us, but then also this crisis that we just went through with weather. We need to make sure that our infrastructure is such that we can make it through anything like that without disrupting our livelihoods. And those are things that is sort of top of mind that I'd like to make sure we address.
Awesome. Well, where can people find more information about you?
My website is www.glaspieforarlington.com. I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, so pretty easy to get information on me.
Well, thank you.
And then, of course, on my website, if you have a question, it tells you how you can get in contact with me.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Yeah. Thank you for your questions.